Ba-na-na, ba-na-na-na-na-na, na-na-na, ba-da. I'm gonna keep it going. For a win like this, we're gonna keep this going, man.
We're
Ba-da.
rocking.
Just like the Celtics are
We're
keeping it rolling,
we're
Franco.
blazing. We're blazing in Portland.
I'm loving it. Oh, we got it. Oh, we're going again.
Oh, we're
Absolutely.
looping. Why
What's
not?
going on, everybody? Welcome back into a late night show here. What do we got here for us? It's 12:49 out west for the Celtics. They're rocking honestly an early ending to this game at right around 9:49 for them. The Celtics, however, they finish off this road trip strong. Franco, after going 3-2 on the trip, they were able to come out and get a win against the Portland Trailblazers in kind of a dominant fashion. It had it up and downs here and there, 121-99. How about Sam Hauser tonight? 22
Oh my
points. We're going to
goodness.
talk way more about him. Obviously, for the Celtics, no Kristaps Porzingis or Drew Holiday tonight. They're going to be back at tomorrow night against Utah at 9 o'clock Eastern time. That's on NBC Sports Boston. Franco, this is our first game in, like, I believe 8 games that will not be on some sort of national television.
It was relieving to hear Drew Carter's voice.
Right?
I mean,
It's been a while. It's been
yeah.
it's been a long time. But again, before we get started, before we really dive into, what tonight showed us for the Celtics, what did you like? Your, initial thoughts, your, reaction.
Well, first off, we came into this game looking at the injury report. Thought we were rolling out the bench squad and we were gonna have All-Star Peyton Pritchard tonight, but he filled in tonight and did a solid job as the starting point guard. And he showed that him, Hauser, and Cornette showed their value and what could be a game when, let's say, Kristaps or hypothetically Drew are out. They showed that they can fill the roles of not needing to be the spark plug, but being able to be a viable player to play alongside JB and JT and the starters during the starting minutes and not be accounted on to possibly mess up. And Sam Hauser showed his worth throughout the game. I mean, his viability from the 3-point line was insane tonight. He was making 3-pointers with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, even though it wasn't that close of a game, but that really put the nail in the coffin and allowed Xavier out there to attend in some "Let's Go Celtics" chants in Portland.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought it was a game that didn't hold much stock for what the Boston Celtics are trying to accomplish this year, obviously, right? Which is win a championship. But I think this was a great opportunity for those guys that you mentioned, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Luke Cornette, O'Shea Brissett, to get some runs with the starters, with guys who they might potentially be, getting reps in with the playoffs if their name is called. And, I thought Zula did a phenomenal job tonight, sprinkling a kind of everyone in. You saw a lot of O'Shea Brissett. 19 minutes is a hefty portion for him. You saw some Luke Cornette, obviously 31 minutes of Sam Hauser, 29 of Peyton Pritchard. So these guys saw about 10 more minutes than they're normally used to seeing. And I think they stepped up big time tonight. I mean, Luke was awesome. Luke had his handprints all over this game. 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks for Luke. I mean, Sam kind of stole the show tonight with his season high performance for Sam Hauser, 22 points. I thought Pritchard was great. And the thing I liked about Pritchard tonight, Franco, was that he was finding ways to contribute to the Celtics and his shot wasn't falling. And I think that's something that Peyton Pritchard kind of struggled with through his early career here in Boston has been, all right, your shot's not falling. What are you going to do to contribute to a win? And tonight he came out 8 rebounds, 8 assists. I mean, that's exactly what you need to do for, to find yourself more playing time is, contribute in more than one aspect. And I think you've seen kind of Sam Hauser do that tonight. 2 steals and 1 block to go along as 22 points. So I do think it was a phenomenal opportunity for those bench guys, those lower end of the rotation guys to catch a rhythm. And don't get it twisted, man. You're going to see a lot more of those games coming up for these guys in these last, this home stretch of the season. You got one against Utah tonight on the second end of a back-to-back. Expect to see no Al Horford. Honestly, expect to potentially even, be missing one of the Jays. That injury report tonight was lengthy. But I do expect Holiday and Porzingis to find themselves back in the lineup. And I think you'll see some of the guys that played tonight resting. So expect more Sam Hauser, expect more Peyton Pritchard, expect more O'Shea Brissett in the lineup because that's the route Boston's going. Tonight, I want to talk about Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
And I read this tweet from Bobby Manning. Shout out Bobby Manning from CLNS Media. He tweeted Tatum over the road trip shot 39.5%, 32 of 81. A rough shooting, road trip
Yeah.
for him, Franco. But tonight, he didn't shoot well by any means. 9 of 23,
No.
9% from the floor, 2 of 8, 25% from behind the arc. But doing he did really well tonight, he passed. He didn't turn the ball over. And that's something that he wasn't really doing super, super well in those first two games against Cleveland and against Denver. He found himself kind of playing reckless and careless. Shot wasn't falling tonight, but talk about making an impact. Tatum, 26 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 turnover. You want to talk about his running mate, Jaylen Brown? He's been super efficient on this road trip. A rough shooting night for him. 27 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. Those turnover margins from Brown and Tatum, those margins are so important. 13 assists for the two of them, 1 turnover.
That it's huge to see that type of performance because tonight it didn't seem like Jason Tatum had all of his confidence in his shot. The shot wasn't falling. I saw him slap his hand a couple of times, and it
Right.
seemed like he was almost getting disappointed in himself that he didn't have 40 points against the Portland Trail Blazers. And I I don't want that to be the pressure that he has on him. The only pressure that he needs to really have on him and focus on is the only statistic that matters is winning in basketball and for the Boston Celtics from here on out for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And
I
and I think
mean,
that I think
he's
that Tatum struggled with, I think in that Denver loss, something that he struggled with was he wasn't aggressive enough. And
right.
I think with you look at Jason Tatum, you're playing into the defense hands. You're really as when you're the defense and Jason Tatum isn't being aggressive, you're bailing him out. You're giving him an opportunity to, kind of
Shoot
not have
himself
to
in the
hone in
foot.
on you, right? And again, it's Jason Tatum. They're going to be honed in on him 24/7. But that game against Denver, Jason Tatum was very okay with moving the ball and getting other people open, which is good. That's all good. You want to see that out of JT. But 13 shots against Denver is something you never want to see from Jason Tatum. Tonight, he was aggressive, man. He was shooting the ball, 23 shots for JT tonight, and he was able to get his looks, stay aggressive, and in the process of doing so, he was able to find his teammates. The game opens up. There's more space. When you continue to be aggressive, the defense is going to continue to put pressure on you. And when the defense continues to put pressure on a guy like Jason Tatum, he's going to have many opportunities to move the ball and swing it and kick it and get those guys going. Jason Tatum is one of the league's best players, if not the best player in the NBA, Franco. He needs
Yeah.
to continue to put the pressure on. He needs to be aggressive. And tonight, bad shooting night. But just like against Phoenix, he didn't take his foot off the gas. He continued to keep it going. And I think when you look at Jason Tatum, that's super important for a guy like him.
We don't need Jason Tatum to be the best player in the NBA. We need Jason Tatum to be the best version of himself. We I know that debate is huge. Who's number 1? Who's top 5? Who's top 10? It really doesn't matter until that championship ring comes on, and then you can start focusing on those extracurriculars. The only thing that he needs to focus on is really the basketball court at this moment, and when he's going into these types of nights and you see these performances, 8 assists from Jason Tatum, he was picking up on the defensive side as well. He was just being able to be that option and take that step back, and what I liked about him and Brown, they were going back and forth from who's getting into the paint, and what they were finding is Horford wide open in the corner throughout the first quarter, and then Sam Hauser was able to shine as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the name of the game right now for Boston and I've said this, they've checked almost every box they need to this season. I mean, they really have. They have been a phenomenal first quarter team, with a struggling third quarter in the first half of the year, and then you've really seen them pick that up. They've been the best defensive team at times. They've been the best offensive team at times. You've seen their bench go off for nights like this. We get 22 points off the bench from Sam Hauser. Luke Cornett's taking strides. You see Joe Mazzulla starting to figure things out and really, come into his own as a coach. You've seen Tatum and you've seen Brown, you've seen Porzingis go off for these big games. You've seen Drew Holiday hit big time shots. Right now with the Boston Celtics, it's just let's just wait and see. If you get this version of the Boston Celtics that we have seen now through 64 games in the regular season, they're gonna walk to the finals. Now the question, has become in the NBA finals, if they see Denver, how confident are we going to be? Well, right now, Denver got the best of us. They're up 2-0 against us. But I like our chances. And right now, where we're at with the Boston Celtics, it's the building block stage. Continue just to build those good habits, right? Stay healthy, win games, build good habits, right? Whatever happens in a game and you're just playing the game how you should be. You're sticking to the game plan. You are making the right plays. Your defensive assignments are on. All that is what matters right now, right? These 50-point explosions from Tatum, but like you said, that doesn't matter right now for the Celtics because right now they need to continue to add building blocks for the playoffs. And where I'm going with this, I guess, is my question for you is when you see a game like tonight and you see how Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, how much confidence do you think have you gained in those two guys and Luke Cornett, those three guys, to potentially slot in to play playoff rotational minutes?
I mean, you look around the NBA and going into the season, I saw Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, and Luke Cornett as our main guys in our rotation coming into the season, and I was a little bit skeptical because um, you looked around the NBA, you look at the Phoenix Suns, they all have this semi star-studded benches where you can see the names that have had success in the league prior, and this is kind of Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett's breakthrough year and Peyton Pritchard's breakthrough year because they're finally getting the opportunity to do so.
Right.
And w they've really expanded upon their roles. I mean, Sam Hauser, I mean, he's just expected to be a situational shooter, and the fact that we're getting contributions from him on the defensive end is huge. And if we can start to work in him with O'Shea, him and O'Shea as the wing tandem behind JB and JT, that has been doing a fantastic job for us. And I think what we need to do is just continue to work those guys in with
Right.
the starters and not do too many platoon swaps and find which matchups work with this roster because there were nights that I can feel confident with this team going and playing every single player that is on the bench at some point during the game and getting the usage that they need out of them and putting them in the best situation that they need to be in for the game.
And you look at Sam Hauser tonight. This is a first for him all season long. Player of the game, Franco. How about
Wow.
this? From saying, and this is actually one of the funny thing about this is I'm sitting there and it's the fourth quarter. I'm thinking to myself, I'm making the graphic. All right, who's tonight's player of the game? Right? It really wasn't Tatum. It really wasn't Brown. And I looked at Pritchard, and at the time, right, Pritchard had 9 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, you know what? Starting role for Peyton Pritchard back in his hometown in Portland, Oregon. I think it might be Pritchard tonight. And then an explosion in the fourth quarter. Here comes Sam Hauser, 22 points, season high. He earned it, man. He played great. And to see this from Sam, and I'm going to tell you this, Franco, if you were watching us way back, right, in that championship season when the things were bad, Sam was my guy. He was sitting on the main Celtics roster. He was balling up in Maine, and I could tell he was a shooter. And I'm happy to really, really one for Sam, and two, well, I'm kind of right. It's always nice to be right a little bit, but you got to feel as a Celtics fan excited for a performance like this. To see Hauser integrate some defensive ability. Obviously, you saw tonight 3 stocks, steal plus blocks, still new to me. I guess that's a new thing as a stock. But to see Hauser kind of step up and really, in my opinion, be the Celtics' main guy tonight. Offensively, they were finding him. He was, getting into a rhythm, taking his time, stepping into some nice shots. You saw him cut into the basket. He caught a lob on a fast break that, finished in a layup. He couldn't throw it down this time, but you've seen a lot of progression from Sam. And I think as a Celtics fan, right, as guys that analyze the Celtics, that's a really positive sign to see a game like this out of Sam in March, because again, a big question mark for the Celtics team is the bench. When we come around to April and May and the dog days and potentially of June, can they get enough scoring? Can they get enough production off the bench from these guys, and to keep guys like this in a rhythm and get them going before the playoffs, so that when they do step onto the court in a game 6 against Milwaukee in Milwaukee, they're going to be ready for it. And I think tonight they took tremendous strides in that. And I think that's a great sign for the Celtics.
And it's really a huge sign to Brad's trust into developing his players. I mean, we when was we got Cornette? I think it was 2 years ago, and I
Right.
remember when he came over, he was a stretch big.
He
You
was.
yeah, you haven't seen Luke Cornette outside the three-point arc in 2 seasons or so, and that's a huge credit to taking a player and seeing potential in him later on in his career. You'd most likely see Luke Cornette around the NBA. We're looking at him as our 3rd center coming
And you know what's
into
the
this
crazy
season.
thing? And I'll take this one on my chest. I had no faith in him this year. I don't think
Oh,
anyone did.
yeah, we if we, go back on our post-game shows in, like,
Yeah, no one trusted him.
October, November, we would be bashing on ourselves now.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about it is, if you go back then, what was our main problem? It wasn't the bench, it wasn't the guards, it wasn't the forwards, it was the big man depth. And tonight, in my opinion, the big men were the strong suit of the Celtics. They kind of have been. They've been I think if you're going to group them, right, guards, forwards, centers, they've been the most consistent. In my
Yeah.
opinion, that big man room has been absolutely outstanding for the Celtics, and Luke Cornett is for a lot of it to take credit for. The ability to stay ready, man. There's some games where you don't see Luke, right? Against the Denver Nuggets, you didn't see Luke Cornett. You saw more Xavier Tillman, matchup wise, and then you see him go out against Phoenix, 14 points against Phoenix, and you see him go out against tonight in against Portland, excuse me. A big time. He had a couple blocks. He had a putback dunk off a Tatum missed layup that, you could hear him scream, no celebration, which I was a little disappointed in. But, it's like to see Luke do that and to prove, because again, we say that type of stuff at the beginning of the year. We don't want to be right when you're saying, oh, this is a weakness for the Celtics. But it was something that was highlighted for us and we were circling and concerned about was, can Luke Cornett be a backup big man for the Celtics, a 3rd string big man? Now I sit here, absolutely. I feel very comfortable with the Luke Cornett, Xavier Tillman little duo that we got rolling now. All right, you want to go a little bit bigger, slower paced, piece you apart big man? All right, we're going to go Tillman, right? Okay, you got a big man in there that's kind of clunky and tall and slow. Guess what? We're going to go Luke, and he's going to eat you over the top. So I think it'll be interesting, because in the playoffs, I think one round you're going to see Luke for 7 games or however long it goes, and then the next round you could see Tillman for 7 games, and that is something that we didn't think the Celtics were going to have the luxury of doing. So fast forward to March, 64 games in, it's a great luxury to have, and props to him. Tip off my hat, my cap to Luke, because shout out Luke Cornett. That dude is balling right now. The vibes, everything, it's there. And how about this, Franco? 50 wins. 50. Celtics first team to 50. Are they the title favorites still? What do you think?
I mean, we went through that little rough patch, obviously. This team's gonna hit some hiccups, and they're hitting a very tough schedule, or part of the schedule this segment, the last week and then heading into this week. We have, tomorrow we're not even 20 hours out from our next Celtics basketball game
I
against
know it's crazy.
Utah.
Right.
So those guys are hitting this sack right now with the
Right.
Celtics, or getting on a plane right now to head to Utah from Portland, which I don't know how long that flight is,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the West, but
but, that's still a lot of traveling, and you could almost see it in the way the team was playing, and gotta tip my cap to Joe Mazzulla because
yep.
it seemed like they were playing very conservative basketball, very
Mhm.
energy saving. No one's diving on the floors because know we are going into a game tomorrow. What I like to see is the rest throughout the first 5 minutes of the game, we only saw 8 players come onto the court or in our
Yeah.
rotation with, Hauser, Brissett, and Cornette,
And you know what's
and
something they did tonight that I thought was phenomenal? They managed the game properly, where they were up by 20. They kind of let off the gas a little bit. All right, let's save our
right,
energy. Lead goes back down to 12. All right, let's boom, step on the throttle again, back up to 20. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of like
yeah,
this. I think that's something against Cleveland. Maybe they tried to do with Denver coming up, and
yeah,
Cleveland took advantage of that. And again, that's another skill set, picking and choosing. You can obviously do that against Portland, with how they're obviously in a rebuilding year. But so I think that tonight Celtics did it perfectly. They executed perfectly, and I think that for them to be able to do that is a growth because you didn't see that in years past. So I think that haps off to Missoula, and that's something with Missoula. And I said it in the last post game show. It's like a coach can have a bad game, man, without me or anyone or wanting to press the big red button and say, "Oh my God, he's terrible." It's like no, a coach can have and will have bad coaching games, and he's going to have a bunch of good coaching games and some great coaching games. What is he going to do in the middle? And I think what he's been doing in the middle, Missoula, on the average night has been much better than much bad. But when you see those warning signs, you got to talk about them. You got to call them out on them because, that's what when you're observing the game, that's what you got to do. And I think the same goes for the Celtics, Franco, this is something I was thinking about today, right? This team has been so good in over 82 games in the NBA. There's going to be a lot of good games that you play. And there's going to be a lot of bad games that you play. Some of the bad games you win, some of them you lose. It's what can you do in the middle? And when you look at the Boston Celtics right now, their middle, their average is better than anyone else in the league.
yeah,
Right. And then there's other things that goes into it, like mismatches or matchups and stuff like that. Obviously, Denver, with what the statement they made in the 2 times we saw them, um, you got to look at that. But right now, the Boston Celtics, their median, their average, their inside the margin numbers and in performances are way ahead, higher than the field. So I do think that when you look at the Boston Celtics and you look at this win, there's a couple of things you can take out of it. One of them, the bench has finally got a groove going, and two, it's that listen, they were able to control the game. That's a progression. That's something that you're looking to see. And I'm interested to see how tomorrow night goes because Utah's a strong team. They're obviously on a skid, 2-8 in their last 10, but it's another opportunity for these guys to go out there and kind of uh, put on a performance.
right, and I hope we'll be seeing. I think we're gonna see a couple of the guys who are playing tonight. I would be dead shocked to see Horford out on the court in Utah tomorrow night. Um,
Right,
I would be, and it wouldn't shock me if JB or JT decide to
right.
take
One of the
tomorrow
two,
night
I
off.
bet. Sit.
Yeah, and then I really hope to see Jaden Springer and Xavier Tillman worked into the rotation a little bit more. And at before playoff time, I would love to see what Fournette and Tillman look like on the court together, because Tillman is known as a 4-5, so he's more of a Al Horford fill-in and has the ability to stretch the floor. Even though it's not his preference, he can still put a 3 ball into the net if need be. So
Right.
I would love to see nights that they aren't okay, one's on, one's off. I think you could run them both interchangeably throughout a game.
I think that you'll see that. And I think when you talk about the Celtics' current position, that's the advantage they currently are playing with now. They got some leeway between us and second place. Teams like Milwaukee, teams like Cleveland, teams like New York, teams like Oklahoma out west, Denver out west, they can't really play around with things right now. Because
No,
if they do, it could cost them a seeding. And next thing you know, you fall from 2 to 4. And then you got to go on the road for the second round and potentially the Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. But the Celtics, they got an 8.5 game lead over the next guy. They can play around a little bit. You can try different defensive sets and different defensive coverages and offensive sets and lineups and, inbounds and late game stuff. Like there's scenarios that now you can, as a coach, look at and see and try things out. And I think you'll see that. I think you'll see a lot of different defensive coverages. I remember last year, Boston for a game kind of sat back and played just one-on-one with Embiid. And the reason for that was they were like, we're not going to show you anything before the playoffs. And that's something that they did was like, listen, we're going to try this out. If it works, we can add it to the playoff book. If it doesn't, we're not giving away much, right? Because it doesn't work.
right.
It didn't work. And then come in the playoffs, they, went to a different hand and they managed Joel Embiid very well. So, I think right now that's where the Celtics stand. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of these post game shows, that's what you're going to hear us saying is like, listen, this is where they're at right now. Right now they are sitting comfortably in first place in the East, waiting for a matchup against Denver in the finals. And I think, you say that as a Celtics fan or a basketball fan. And I do think there's some competition in the Eastern Conference that they're going to have to get through, right? If New York's healthy, they're going to be tough. Cleveland played us well the last time we saw them without Donovan. I think Milwaukee will still potentially be there and still give you trouble if you take them
Yeah.
lightly. I still
I
think you have to handle business against them.
Milwaukee is one of those teams. When they get into the playoffs, if they're, I think they're going to be our most competitive defense, and obviously can't knock on wood. Our devil in our closet, Miami, hiding from
Right.
us, waiting
Right.
to waiting to burst out of the shadows and catch us when we're not expecting it the least.
Right. And I
But
think against teams in the Eastern Conference all season long, we've been very solid with, right? Just despite that one Milwaukee blowout that we dropped the ball with, uh, I really like our chances against any team in the East. And I think that's what you'll start to see now from the Celtics is not playoff mode, but let's get ready for the playoffs. I think a lot of these things you're going to be seeing are going to be test runs. And I think there's definitely some big games on the schedule, right? That they're going to treat like playoff games, right? I think you still got to see Milwaukee twice. You still got some of these games. I think you see New York one more time. You got some of these you got Phoenix coming back to Boston,
yep,
this upcoming week. That's a big one. So again, some opportunities here, Franco, for the Celtics. But as for tonight, they did everything they needed to do with despite not having Kristaps Porzingis or Drew Holiday. Celtics 121-99 win, a late night show from us. We'll have you covered tomorrow too. With us and more of the guys, obviously a much more doable start time for us. Obviously
yeah.
tomorrow night, and it says Wednesday down there. I was making the graphic past midnight, and it confused me. I won't lie. I saw Tuesday they play tomorrow. However, they actually play today. The Celtics will take on the Utah Jazz tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time. Catch that game on NBC Sports Boston, guys. But Franco, before we close out the show, any last comments, thoughts, takeaways from tonight?
I mean, the tonight tonight was one of those games that I had just the I was like, man, if things go poorly, uh, what will they be saying? But I just being able to get through that first quarter, those little woes, because they were keeping up with us until probably halfway through the first quarter, and I think they tied it up again in the second half or second quarter. And the fact that they were able to maintain the situation, That
Right.
it's cruise control. If this team can find their cruise control, their consistency, they'll be able to coast, and we'll be able to talk it game by game, situation by situation, round by round when it comes playoff time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tonight, I thought the bench players stepped up and showed us that listen, they can compete, man. Don't take them lightly. These guys can compete, and they will compete. I'm really excited for tomorrow night because I think it's another opportunity for these guys to kind of get some reps they're not used to getting. Utah, like I said, they're weaker, 2-8 in their last 10, but you're on the road. Those guys play Sexton, Clarkson, all those guys marking in. Those guys
Danny
like to
wants
get out. Yeah,
Danny loves to beat Brad.
yeah, right.
They'll be talking smack in the text messages after the game, whoever wins.
Absolutely. Utah's gonna want to go out there and win. They got a great fan base out there that they show up and they get rowdy. So that that place is gonna be packed and loud, and it's gonna be a good one. I'm excited for it. And like I said, we'll have you covered here live after the final buzzer sounds against the Utah Jazz for CTW post game live. I'm Rob. Next to me is my man Nick Franco. And guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And until next time, go Celtics.